Welcome to Commander Central, episode 238, and today we're welcoming in the new year by doing a Decks You Play for Patreon supporter Wes Allen and his Lazav Dimir Mastermind EDH deck. I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
Chris, Happy New Year. Did you have a great holiday season?
So far, yeah. Can't complain.
Can't complain. That's good. That's good.
I consider the holiday season, all the way through January, pretty much. Otherwise, January turns into one of those months where it's like, oh my god, just go away already.
That's fair. I tend to cut the holiday season off depending on, a typical year. Sometimes I might have one straggling family celebration in the middle of January or something, but, COVID exists and everything was done over virtual for me this year, so my last one wrapped up on New Year's Day, so now it's just back to how many more days until Memorial Day weekend where I get a long weekend at work.
That's a long time, my friend.
It is a very long time. Thankfully, I do have some vacation time, but, with no Magic Fests that we know of yet or anything, it's going to be hard to look forward to something other than a scheduled government holiday.
Makes sense.
So, Dana, unfortunately, got stuck doing a work thing today, so it's just Chris and I recording on a Friday afternoon, and we're here to do this awesome deck tech for Patreon supporter Wes Allen, and typically we always ask some questions beforehand, so, of course, we always ask what is their meta like, and Wes says it's very diverse, and he has people that get together anywhere from 12 to 20 players at a time. That's awesome. Anywhere from decks from a single set to CEDH, but the group is really good at Rule Zero conversations so that people generally know what sort of deck to bring out to play. Not a lot of pub stomping. The deck we're going to talk about today is built so he can play against the strongest and the weakest of the non-CEDH decks.
That makes sense. That's how a deck should play.
Exactly.
So, we're always curious, what is the goal of the deck, because I don't want to just, run in blind and be like, oh, what's going on here? No, we just scrap all this and we start over, I want to know what the goal of the deck is. So we're told the goal of the deck is to get cards in everyone's graveyards. Not just your own, but everyone's. And then look for creative ways to use resources from other decks to win the game. He's built in a suite of protection to keep from getting wiped out most of the time if he hasn't built up a board state. But the number one way that this deck tries to win is staying aware of what is on board and in graveyards and finding cool synergies. So I'm assuming, you do a little bit of reanimating shenanigans, you look at this and you're like, oh, combo time, boom, boom, guess what? I comboed, but they're not my cards, so I'm still a good guy, right? That's how that works.
I don't play a lot of combo, but I think I would be okay if someone comboed out using my own deck against me.
I think I would be fine with that too. We were told that a plan B is, to do enough damage with a Blood Chief Ascension, Sir Conrad, Dimir Guildmage, that kind of, Blood Artist type effects when you're milling someone out. The mostly useful if it's down to 1v1. It's kind of hard to, Blood Artist someone out, a whole table out unless your deck's completely dedicated to it. And there's a couple of combos in here, I saw them and I was like, very, very cute. I like this.
Awesome. Finally, we do ask what areas of weakness for the deck are, or what should we focus on when going through it on the show? And Wes says sometimes it's hard to build up enough of a board state to hold up against the big stompy creature decks, so suggestions on addressing that would be appreciated. Also, it's Dimir, so mana is never plentiful unless I can copy something that works well. He'd love some ideas on how to find a way to kind of spruce up that section of the deck as well. He also says there might not be enough draw in the deck if he can't steal or copy something.
Okay, makes sense.
A lot of key components for an EDH deck there, so I think we can cover that.
Yep.
And finally, we do ask the budget restrictions, and Wes said there are no real budget limitations today for the deck. So all gloves are off, Chris. Let's go reserve list, all the pricey cards, and Dimir.
Yeah, just a quick question to shoot out to Wes, if there's no budget restrictions, why do I not see, an Underground Sea or something in here, that kind of stuff? No, I'm just giving you crap.
Exactly.
Because I personally don't own an Underground Sea neither, and I probably never will. So I'm never going to judge someone who never has one.
I'm in the same boat. I don't own one, don't plan on owning one unless, I find one in a gutter on the street corner that's barely sleeve playable.
Yeah. So, that's something I wouldn't mind discussing here quick. People say, no budget restrictions, but the amount of cards that are available to us as an EDH community, you don't have to look at the reserve list, the ABR duels, the high spendy cards. There are many cards out there that do similar aspects, but are way down on the spectrum of price.
Oh, for sure. We have 17,000 cards available to us, so you don't even always have to go to the top 50 on EDHREC. Like you said, Chris, there are so many awesome options if you do the time to do the digging on Scryfall to find what you're looking for.
Yeah, I've been kind of living on Scryfall lately, buying new cards, and I've been putting my shop, like, they've been very angry with me because I come in with like a list of like 20 cards. I'm like, I only want them in foils. And they're like, oh, really? I'm like, yep, that's all I want. If you don't have them in foil, I don't want them.
I mean, as long as they aren't Commander Legends Pringle foils, I think that's okay.
A couple of them are. They might be sitting there underneath like 20 books right now getting flattened, so...
I have a stack between like 2 different full 5K boxes just flattening out, and I'll pull them out probably in March.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. I didn't realize they curled that bad until I went in there and bought some. I'm like, joy. This is glorious.
But... that was a tangent. Let's get back to this deck tech. So, who is the commander? Why don't we give Lazav, Dimir, Mastermind a read today, Chris?
So, Lazav, Dimir, Mastermind is a 4-mana shapeshifter. The mana cost is double blue, double black. He is a 3/3 with hexproof and reads, whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may have Lazav, Dimir Mastermind, become a copy of that card, except its name is still Lazav. It's legendary in addition to its other types, and it gains hexproof and this ability. So pretty much it's just this card, just staple all the other text off the other card onto this card.
Yep, so this is the first Lazav, not the new Lazav 2.0 that was printed in the Return of Ravnica block last year, or 2 years ago at this point. Wow, seeing that this airs in 2021.
Don't worry, Ravnica's coming back again. It's coming.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Every 3 years or something like that?
Every 4 or 5, yeah, and I'm fine with that, so it's one of my favorite sets. Have you ever played against this commander, Chris?
Not this one specifically. I have seen it out on the table before, but never sat down to play against it. And I have actually looked at deck lists for this said creature, but seems like it would be fun. I mean, it fits right into the colors of what, blue and black really want to do. Black wants to kill and reanimate, and blue wants to draw cards, so...
Yeah, I definitely agree. I have not seen it at a table. I've toyed around with it. It definitely is... It sounds like a commander that takes a lot of work. But you know what? Sometimes that work pays off.
Yes, for sure.
So why don't we start with the land base today? Wes is running 35 lands in this 2-color deck. So there's an Ancient Tomb, a Bajuka Bog, City of Brass, Command Tower, Darkwater Catacombs, Drowned Catacomb, Exotic Orchard, Fabled Passage, Fetid Pools, Ghost Quarter. There's 10 islands and 7 swamps, a Morphic Pool, a Polluted Delta, Scavenger Ground, Sunken Hollow, Tainted Isle, Temple of Deceit, Underground River, and Watery Grave. For a guy like me who doesn't build Dimir, this is the land base I would start with, I think. What do you think, Chris?
Yes, I like this land base a lot. It's pretty much where you want to be for your 2 colors, aside from running, like your ABR duels and a couple other, higher end cards. Personally, I think it's lacking a little bit in utility lands due to the simple fact that you're 2-color, so you have a little bit more wiggle room in utility lands. I do know by looking at the rest of the deck, there are a lot of color pips, so I understand having to stick, mainly in colors, but you only have, what is it, 3 utility lands, 3 or 4 utility lands, so you could up that by like 1 or 2 of them. And the first one I'm going to suggest right now is a card that we've been talking about the last, 3 or 4 episodes, and that's War Room. I mean, this card is so powerful. I would be putting it in this deck just for the simple fact of you need card draw. That was your number one thing, is you need some sort of card draw. Why not play that? If you have nothing else going on, you can use it to draw a card.
I 100% agree with you there, Chris. Knowing that this deck is about using your opponent's deck, you never know what you're going to come across. So maybe you'll get lucky and run across a life gain deck that you can turn Lazav into like a Baneslayer Angel. So you can recoup that. You can recoup that 2 life. You'll be able to recoup that life loss from War Room and still draw some cards.
Yes.
I think War Room is a great addition. I'm surprised you did not start off with one of your favorite lands in Field of the Dead.
Yep, that was another one I contemplated on that. But as you and I, we were discussing this before show started, and it's hard with a deck like this because your deck, Wes, is very, tuned as to what it wants to do. So if we start adding certain cards such as that, it kind of pulls away from the aspect of the deck a little bit. So I didn't want to go too ham into stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you said there, Chris. I think knowing that it's a 2-color deck, there is some wiggle room with some utility lands, and Field of the Dead just benefits you from playing the game. It benefits you for playing lands. So at least it's putting bodies on the battlefield to block those creature decks that he may run into.
Yep.
So that's why I would suggest Field of the Dead, just because it's another payoff of just playing the game where it might, for all you know, that 2/2 zombie is going to save you an extra turn to where you can combo off next turn and win the game.
Yep. And if you do run Field of the Dead, my suggestion would be to, you run a 10 islands, 7 swamps. So I would run, 5 islands, 5 snow islands, and then 4 swamps, 3 snow swamps, or vice versa type of deal. Just because the snow is considered a separate land, so when it'll trigger your Field of the Dead, so you have more options to trigger it.
Yep, 100% agree there. Do you have any other land recommendations?
Not really for this land base. I mean, it's pretty well tweaked up. 2 colors, 35 lands is pretty good. You could maybe bump it up to 36. Depending on how, you're actually playing. Like, I know there's quite a few spells that are high CMC. So, I mean, maybe having an extra land in there to play might be worth it. Other than that, I like it the way it sits.
Yeah, I like this land base. Maybe bumping one more would be okay, because you are in colors that don't ramp. And, Wes identified that in his notes to us. The deck does have an average CMC of 3.34. So, you know what? Maybe it does work out just being at 35. Maybe it doesn't. But, there is that little flex room of, hey, do I really need this card when that extra swamp or island, or maybe just slot in a utility land as your 36th land?
Yep, agreed.
Okay, Chris, where do you want to move to next?
Why don't we just jump in the enchantments, because there is only 4 of them. Be quick and easy. Discuss them. The enchantment base also contains one of the cards that he was discussing that is a secondary win condition type of piece. So with the 4 enchantments, we have Animate Dead, Bloodchief Ascension, Imprison in the Moon, and Rhystic Study. All your basic, enchantment base. Animate Dead, for those who don't know, is an aura that you can attach to a creature, comes into play, gets a -1/-1 counter on it, or it is -1/-1 from the enchantment. But pretty much it's an reanimate is what it is, but as an enchantment. So Bloodchief Ascension. We'll discuss this card. Now, seeing how
I have memories of this card, so
yeah, I play this card. This card's phenomenal. So seeing how this deck really wants, cards in people's graveyards, this card works phenomenal for that. And then you want to start, like pinging people and all that. And it also is going to help you gain the life that we were discussing. This card, for those of you that don't know, it is a 1-mana enchantment that reads, at the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you may put a charge counter on Bloodchief Ascension. Now, whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Bloodchief Ascension has 3 or more counters on it, that player loses 2 life, and then if they do, you gain 2 life. So, gain life, mill people, so good.
Oh, and that kind of synergizes with War Room, because you're only going to lose 2 life off of War Room.
Yes, indeed. And then, you're playing against multiple people. Like, for me, I've had this thing trigger every single turn. You're just like, oh, this is so good.
It's so nasty. I love it. I love when this card goes off in your Mogus deck, so.
Yep, and this actually, in my opinion, is really good in this deck if you can get the charge counters on it. Now, that's something... I'm not sure how tough it is to get the charge counters on it in this deck, but once they're on there, go ham with it.
Okay, so 4 enchantments, a win con, a combo piece, and some removal and draw.
Yep. Now, I have a couple of enchantments I would like to suggest.
I would love to hear them, because I struggled with trying to find enchantments, because it felt like anything I would want to suggest would push the strategy more towards, like, the mill end of the spectrum, where, all the enchantments that would work want you to kind of lean more into the mill aspect of Lazav. So what do you have for suggestions?
First one I want to suggest is Memory Erosion. Now, this card is a 3-mana blue enchantment, double blue in the pips, but it reads, whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. Now, yes, this puts you into more of the mill aspect, but it's not actually forcing you to do anything. All it is it's punishing them for casting spells. So it actually, benefits how you're actually playing the game. Because you want cards in their graveyards to be playing Lazav to, grab stuff. And this is something you don't have to dedicate, resources into. You just play it, let it sit there, and let them do stuff to mill themselves out.
Okay, what else do you have?
The other one is a 5-mana enchantment, 4 colorless and a black, and it's known as the greatest enchantment ever, the Eldest Reborn. The Eldest Reborn is a saga, for those of you who don't know, and it reads, for the first part of it, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. The second part, each opponent discards a card. The third part is, put target creature or planeswalker from a graveyard onto the battlefield underneath your control. All 3 aspects are actually doing something. The first two are each opponent, so it's not like you're targeting one person, and then when the third part kicks off, you're doing exactly what your deck wants to do. You're taking something from somebody. So, I mean, this, to me, I love this card. It'd be worth it to give it a shot, see if you can slot it in somewhere. Try it, because it's another reanimate effect, built into doing other stuff.
Okay. Those are both awesome suggestions. I have one. I did find one that I would like to suggest, and that's Mind's Dilation.
Oh no.
So this is a 7 mana enchantment, 5 blue from Eldritch Moon. Whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. I think this kind of screams Lazav. You're stealing the card, you're getting rid of stuff off of their library, maybe not to the graveyard, but it's still, milling them to a point. And it may just be one of those things where you get lucky and you hit a ramp spell. So you can ramp some lands out. You hit a draw spell. You hit a Factor Fiction. You hit a removal spell. You hit something like that where it's just going to benefit the entire table or just you.
Yep. The downfall of C to a card like this is it is high CMC. But the thing I love about this card is even if let's say you flip a creature, you play the creature, they kill it, and you're like, oh, you cast Lazav and you just create a copy of that creature that they just killed, and then they have to deal with it again.
For sure, it's making the table use their resources on their own cards, which is always fun to do, especially when your deck wants to be using your opponent's stuff against them.
Yes, I agree 100%. I love this card. I've seen it played in many decks. A lot of them are cheater decks, like whatever that red-blue gal is, Joyra or whatever, who just cheats cards off the top of the deck or whatever, suspends them. I don't know how she works. All I know
the original Joyra, the suspend Joyra.
She's a cheater card. That's all I know. Let's just put, like all these suspend, these things that suspend that cost like 12 mana, and guess what? Blam, 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 and you're like,
You mean Eldrazi? That's all she plays is Eldrazi.
The one guy's deck who I've played that he has one of those. He doesn't play a single Eldrazi in there. It's more of let's take like 3 extra turns. Let's play like Mind's Dilation and other cards like that, and you're just like, okay, I see how this deck plays.
Yeah. Okay. So any other enchantment suggestions here?
Nope, that was it. This deck, in my opinion, probably doesn't want to go hard into the enchantment route because you can't reanimate them. You can't do, reuse them when they're gone. So get as much value out of what you have when it's there before someone removes it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think this deck I think Mind's Dilation being that 7 mana card, I think this deck has a lot of flexibility where you can kind of be fast to hang with the higher powered decks. Yep. Or you can play at a slower speed to where, you're playing with more casual decks. You can sit down and be like, cool, I can play slow, drop Mind's Dilation on turn 7 in, magical Christmas land scenario.
Yep.
And just have fun with it for the rest of the game.
So, speaking of it being a 7 mana card, and I brought up, that it was expensive, how about we move into artifacts so we can see if there is any sort of like ramp in this deck?
Let's rock and roll.
Okay.
What do we have for artifacts, Chris?
We have 13 artifacts. We have Arcane Signet, Crucible of Worlds, Dimir Signet, Felwar Stone, Folio of Fancies, Mesmeric Orb, Mind Crank, Mirage Mirror, Soul Ring, Soul Guide Lantern, Talisman of Dominance, Thought Vessel, and Vedalken Orrery. And already I know exactly what card I'm cutting and I'm switching out for.
Then let me have it, Chris, because I think this is a nice little artifact package, but I have a feeling I know what you're going to suggest. So what is it?
Oh, I'm cutting Vedalken Orrery right now. Not even a hesitation in that. It's gone. See ya. Personally, for me, this is a personal choice 100% here. Might not be the proper choice, and probably everyone's hollering at me right now as they're listening. They're like, what are you talking about? This card's phenomenal. And it's like, honestly, I like playing the game at sorcery speed. It allows you to do things guaranteed. This is how it's going to work. You don't have to hold up for what ifs and everything else. So I want to remove Vedalken Orrery, and I want to replace it with a wonderful card called Helm of the Host.
Yes, that was on my list as well.
So Helm of the Host, for those of you that don't know, Dana loves this card because Dana plays this card, and this card has destroyed me numerous times. It is a 4-mana legendary artifact equipment. It equips for 5 mana. At the beginning of your turn, create a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except for that token is not legendary if you equip creature is legendary, and that token gains haste. So guess what? Let's just suit up Lazav and create another token. And then blam! And then I get to attack with it right away, and it's just blah.
Yep, I love it. I love that idea. Anything to get more Lazav triggers is what you really want to be doing in this deck, I think, to really take advantage of all the graveyards in the game.
Yep. The big thing I really, really like about that is that Lazav has hexproof built into him. So, I mean, when you create a token of him, it still gains a hexproof. So people can't single target out to destroy. So if you get like 3 or 4 of these out there, I don't know what a table's going to do about it. They're just going to sit there and cry and be like, you're cheating now and all that stuff. No, they would never say that to you. I would be like, this is awesome. I want to see what else you can do.
The best Helm of the Host memory I have is the Atraxable from Vegas 3 years ago.
Oh, no.
Where Commander they did a Helm of the Host Atraxa deck, and that's the goal was to find Helm of the Host and just poison counter everybody with 7 Atraxas out.
That is so horrible.
But it was fun. It was fun. I have a couple suggestions for artifacts, but these point it more towards the competitive end of the spectrum.
Yep.
And it would be Grindstone and Painter's Servant.
Yes, you could do that. I mean, another nice little combo built in.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I don't think every table is going to want to see. That's definitely a Rule 0 conversation right there, saying, hey, I run this combo. Maybe you don't tutor for it. Maybe you just put a self-limitation on where you just draw into it. Or, you don't have to run it. It is just something that is to be considered when playing this type of deck.
Yep. And honestly, for me personally, when you have that conversation about a deck, I expect majority of decks to have some sort of combo in them. Like, it might not even be a combo that they realize, and it might not be like a game-winning combo. It could be I get to play 12 lands this turn because I just comboed. And it's like, well, that was awesome that worked that way. So I mean,
right.
I usually expect a combo of some sort in a deck. Well, yes, this would be a game-winning, back-breaking combo type of deal. It's nothing, as long as people are like, okay, and then, and I can tell by looking at your deck list that there is probably no way you're ever going to be able to tutor this combo up. But that's besides the point. So, I mean, it is definitely something to consider.
Yeah, for sure.
I was contemplating Sword of Body and Mind for this deck. For those of you that don't know, Sword of Body and Mind is the green-blue sword that creates tokens and mills. So it does both things. Okay. The thing that I was thinking about for this was due to the simple fact of you want to be milling your opponents a little bit so you can get your Lazav and other stuff going on, but it also creates the tokens. And you said you had an issue, with like stompy decks or like fast creature decks or something like that. So this gives you options of having other things out there to kind of soak up damage so you're not the one taking it.
Yeah, I love that idea too. And, we've discussed in the past in the show that, mill is very fragile because for all you know, you're going to fuel that other graveyard deck you're playing against. And, sometimes that's just the risk you have to take when you choose to play a deck like Lazav or any deck that revolves around putting cards into graveyards because you could run up against, a Marin deck or a Shieldred deck, but you just got to hopefully be able to have the answers sooner than they do.
Yep, and I suggest to everybody, it doesn't matter who it is, I don't care if you're a new player or one of my closest friends who I don't want you to win the game, I suggest to people, build in some sort of graveyard synergy in your deck, some way that you can use your graveyard to your advantage. So mill just, the way I suggest it to people, mill's just going to lack anyways.
Yep, for sure.
So the other thing I had to suggest is these are all mana racks, and you said, no budget restrictions, so I'm going to just say it right out there, no mana crypt, no mana vault, any of that stuff, which would, aside from casting Lazav, would help the rest of your deck out, that little bit of mana acceleration. You could also consider like the Dimir Locket or the Dimir Cluestone. Both of them are allowed, later in the game to crack them to draw cards. So, I mean, they're not only a mana rack, but they're also a card draw aspect later in the game. Kind of fit in both the little, conundrums is the right word.
Yep. No, I like both of those. I think if I had to choose from the fast mana rocks, I think Vault is better than Crypt just because Crypt you have to pay for.
Yes.
You have to pay that 4 mana on tap, and I feel like this is the deck that knows what its mana is going to do every turn, and taking a turn off to untap a mana rock might not be what it wants to do, but I do like the suggestion.
That is true. I mean, it's just, I was thinking of the best mana rocks we could put in these colors that would do something. I mean, you also have like your Mind Stone, which is a 2 mana rock that you can crack to draw a card later. I mean, anything to give you just that little bit extra to allow you to play your cards a little bit sooner, a little even more on time sometimes. Because if you're anything like me, when I've played, I'll have, 38 lands in my deck, 10 mana rocks, and I'm still sitting there on 2 lands going, this is crap. I hate this game.
Yeah, I have a couple suggestions too here.
Okay.
On the mana rock subject, Midnight Clock. This was a mana rock out of Throne of Eldraine. It's 2 and a blue. It taps for a blue. You can pay 2 and a blue to put an hour counter on it, and at the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. When it has 12 counters, you shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, and then draw 7 cards, and you exile Midnight Clock. So
Okay.
it's a mana rock for a couple turns. And I know he talked about putting cards into everybody's graveyard, but at the same time, your graveyard is probably the least important out of the game because Lazav can't touch your graveyard.
Yes.
So if that means you need to refuel and get that, get a creature back into your library, or get your Mystical Tutor back, or, get your Animate Dead back, or your Bloodchief Ascension back, this would be a great way to get that back into your library to start drawing cards. Maybe you'll draw it in that fresh 7 when you resolve that ability.
I keep forgetting about Midnight Clock. Whenever I think of shuffling in a graveyard, I always think of the other rock where you gain like 5 life and
Elixir of Immortality.
Yeah, that's the one that always pops in my mind. I always forgot about Midnight Clock. I might have to remember that.
The only reason I remember this one is because Dana hoses me with it every time he plays it. Like when he cracks it, he gets like that winning hand to be like, "Oh, I found all my answers."
Well, that's because you guys don't cut his deck. When he shuffles, you got to watch that man.
It's really hard to take a time out and drive across town, knock on his door, and cut his deck, and then drive home. My final artifact selection is kind of more of a pet card of mine, and that's Conjurer's Closet. And I had this as like a maybe suggestion, but now that you suggested Sword of Body and Mind, I think Conjurer's Closet is a cool thing to be like, you attack someone, they mill 10, and let's say you don't want Lazav to be whatever it is right now, you can blink it, have it come back in, and hit that new fancy creature that just got into that graveyard.
Yes. Yeah, that's actually really good too. Yeah. I actually didn't think about that card. I actually play that card. I don't know why I didn't think of that one. Because I was going through too, and I'm like, oh yeah, we slapped some Greaves and all this stuff in here. And I'm like, wait, Lazav's got hexproof anyways. What am I talking about? Yeah, those are, a decent idea too. I mean, just to the simple fact of getting haste. So, I mean, if, you do play Lazav, and it's like, and now I'm going to turn Lazav into, we'll go back to the Baneslayer Angel that Max was talking about, or whatever, slap the Greaves on it, give it Shroud, swing in and gain the life. I mean, that could be something to contemplate. I'm not sure exactly how the meta plays out in your town, how you're playing, that kind of stuff. But it's always something I've contemplated, and it's very hard for me because I love those cards, but I hate those cards at the same time. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they are good cards. I think it depends on the commander, and I think if Lazav had another form of evasion, I would definitely agree, find a way to put haste on it.
Yep.
But for all you know, you're gonna hit a creature in a graveyard that has haste, so you can get through with it because of the Lazav ability.
Oh, well, if you hit a creature with haste, you're not winning, because obviously you're playing against a red deck, and that's the best cards in the world, so...
I mean, green gets haste now. I mean, green is the best color in Magic.
You know what, Wizards, if you're listening right now, you guys need to just chill out on green a little bit and help the other colors out. So where would you like to move to next?
Let us move to sorceries.
All right, we shall go into the sorceries, and I will leave this nice little chunk of sorceries to you.
Awesome. So there are a dozen sorceries. We're kicking off with Agadeem's Awakening. We'll come back to that one. Damnation, Demonic Tutor, Extract from Darkness, Maddening Cacophony, Mind Grind, Mnemonic Betrayal, Reanimate, Rise of the Dark Realms, Rite of Replication, Toxic Deluge, and Whispering Madness.
All very good ones.
A lot of great cards. So Agadeem's Awakening, it's one of those MDFC cards from Zendikar Rising. It's the land on the backside, which you can pay 3 life to have it untap, come in untapped as a black producing mana source. Or you can pay X and triple black to return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of cards that each have a different converted mana cost of X or less. What do you think about this card in this deck?
I like this card a lot, and I don't mind it in this deck due to the simple fact of there's quite a few cards in here like Mesmeric Orb that are going to nail you, other little things, that may just mill, like everybody on the table mills 2 or something like that. So it allows you to do that. The thing I don't like about it is that it is directly reliant on your graveyard. Whereas when you're playing a mill-based deck, you're trying not to mill yourself, you're trying to mill everybody else. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, in my opinion. It could be a dead card in hand, which turns it into a land, or it could be a phenomenal card. That's the other thing, I just talking to myself now right here. It's a land, so I mean, it's still a good card.
Exactly. And I'm not a big fan of these MDFCs. I've said it on this show. I've said it on some streams I've been on. But the fact that this is a land, you don't have to pay the 3 life. I mean, that's the floor right there. Is you get a land.
Yes.
And that's okay in this color pair.
Yes.
I do think there are enough things in here that I think, let's say you pay 4 into it. So you pay 7 total mana. You get that Blood Chief Ascension back. You get that Arcane Signet back. You get a land back, So worst case, you probably get at least a land and 2 other things back with it on top of whatever else. Or maybe the game turned in your favor and you can pump 20 into this and you can get that Mind's Dilation back if you put that in the deck,
Agreed.
What other cards in the sorceries would you like to talk about here, Chris?
Well, you want me to talk about the cards in the sorceries? I was looking at my list of cards I have to put in there.
Well, we can get there.
Well, let's see. Rite of Replication is good. Rise of the Dark Realms, phenomenal card. Toxic Deluge, awesome. Whispering Madness, awesome. You know what? Actually, Whispering Madness is probably the one card that I was actually a little torn on. Due to the simple fact of, it is a mill card, it is a wheel card, but it has Cipher, so you're not really abusing it too much. You probably can abuse it. Wouldn't surprise me. I'm probably missing something in here, but that's just me. I miss a lot of things. The other one, Maddening Cacophony. This was a card that I wanted to, talk about. So, Maddening Cacophony, for those of you that don't know, 2 mana sorcery, reads each opponent, mills 8 cards. Now, it has a kicker of 4 mana, 3 colorless and a blue, and if it happens that you kick it, they round half their libraries. What is that? That's 4/6 mana to do a Traumatize that only hits 1 person. So, I think this card is bonkers in this deck, because it allows you to hit everybody and just go, now who do I steal stuff from with Lazav?
Exactly, yeah. I really love this card. 6 mana to Traumatize the table is awesome. On top of, you hit someone with Sword of Body and Mind, you could win by mill that way, which is awesome. I love seeing mill win just because it's one of those archetypes, in my opinion, like Infect, that it's really hard to do more than once. Like, maybe you mill one player out, and then the other players know what you're doing, and they turn on you.
Yep, I know for my mill deck that I have, which I'm starting to tune a little bit more now because the more I've been seeing a lot more of them, I have a combo built in that allows me to take infinite turns, so I can mill the entire table out. And I've ran into that where I mill 2 people out and I'm down to the third person. Like, I have to combo, otherwise I just lose. This is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So, I mean, I like seeing that there is a option in this deck where you can mill them or you can just win doing other stupid stuff.
That's great. So I'll kick it off. I have a couple suggestions here. My first being Treasure Cruise. So Treasure Cruise, for those who don't...
I got this. Let's see if I can mimic Dana's voice. That's a bad card. I don't know. I don't like the Treasure Cruise.
Oh.
I love you, Dana.
When did Dana come here? Okay, so Treasure Cruise, for those who don't know, is a 8 mana sorcery, 7 in a blue, but it has Delve, so you can reduce that based on how many cards you exile from your graveyard, and you draw 3 cards. I chose this because, again, Lazav, I understand you want stuff in your graveyard, but Lazav doesn't really care about your graveyard. So it's okay if you have to exile some stuff out of your graveyard if it means drawing 3 cards for a blue, for all you know.
Yep.
My other suggestion is Talent of the Telepath.
Ooh, that's a good card.
This was a 4 mana sorcery from Magic Origins, 2 blue, and it says target opponent reveals the top 7 cards of their library. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among them without paying its mana cost, then that player puts the rest into their graveyard. It also has Spell Mastery, so if there are 2 or more instants or sorceries in your graveyard, you can cast 2 of the cards from those 7 for free. This is why I really like this card in this deck. Whether you have Spell Mastery or not, the other 6 cards go into the graveyard. So you're fueling Lazav. This deck has 20-some instants or sorceries in it already, so you're probably going to hit Spell Mastery pretty quickly. Now, let's say he talked about how ramp is a problem. Well, let's say you hit that mono green player and you hit, a Cultivate and a Kodama's Reach. You just put 2 lands on the battlefield and 2 lands into your hand.
Yep, I wouldn't even hesitate. I would just be like, those 2 cards played now.
Exactly. Or let's say you hit the mono red player and you steal a couple creatures because you don't have Lazav out yet with some threaten effects. Like, there's so much potential that this card could hit just based on the random color combinations you might see at a table where you're probably going to see something you want to cast no matter what. Yeah, you're going to whiff every now and then. I've seen that happen, and it sucks, but I think there's way more upside to the worry of whiffing with it when you cast it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen decks that are dedicated to using cards such as that, where the whole deck is tuned to do that, and they whiff. And it's just like, today's just not your day, is it, bud?
Exactly. You hit that clump of 18 lands in a row, and it's just like, ugh.
Yep, I've had that. So I have a few of, that I would suggest. And one of them, I know that Dana would have suggested if he was here, so it's definitely going to be one that I'm going to bring up right now. And that's a card called Notion Rain. 3 mana sorcery, surveil 2, draw 2, lose 2. The surveil allows you to, pitch cards. I mean, that's what you want to do, right? You want to get rid of junk cards. And, you have a couple reanimate effects that can hit your graveyard, so might as well do that. I also have, Read the Bones. That's just a phenomenal card. Tidings is another one. Tidings is a 5 mana sorcery that allows you to draw 4 cards. I mean, 5 for 4, that's pretty good in my opinion. Another one.
You like that card, don't you?
You
run that a lot in your blue decks.
I do. I mean, for 5 mana to just net 4 cards straight outright, I think it's phenomenal. The other one is Diabolic Vision. This is a 2 mana sorcery that allows you to dig 5, take 1, put the rest of them on the bottom. Phenomenal card. Something to think about due to the simple fact, you want to look for key cards in this deck. You can't just rely on other things happening. And then the final one, I actually have this set off to the side because I wanted to bring this one up, is Enter the God Eternals. This is a sorcery from one of the new...
Was it War the Spark?
Yeah, one of the newer sets. All I know is this set was like a blur to me because I played so many matches, doing sealed and other stuff. It was just like, oh my god, so much stuff going on. So this is for 5 mana, 2 colorless, double blue and a black. You get a sorcery that reads, Enter the God Eternals deals 4 damage to target creature and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. So it allows you to take out a creature of some sort. You gain life. Then, target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, doing what you want to do, which is pretty good. Then you get to amass 4. So now you're getting a 4/4 zombie token on top of that. So you get 3 things for 5 mana. One of the things for sure is doing what you need to do. The other one's giving you a token to help you with those decks that are whooping on you. And then the other one's just gaining that life back that you had lost from getting whooped on. So, I mean, everything just seems to fit into what you're looking for to do.
Yeah, I love that card. That's a great suggestion. I had totally forgotten about that. And in Dimir, a 4/4 for 5 is pretty solid, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and it may not be anything other than a chump blocker for all you know, which is just fine, which, in my opinion, in a deck that's built to do a different scenario other than, the combat step, having those chump blockers is just, that's priceless.
Yeah, great suggestion. That's a deep find. I like that.
Well, I like the cards, so I mean, I pulled out my mill deck and I started looking at all the cards in my mill deck. I'm like, oh, this is a good card and this is a good card.
Perfect. Any other sorceries?
Nope, that would be it for the sorceries for me.
Okay, well, let's jump over to the instants.
Oh boy. So a baker's dozen's 14, right? That's how that works, or is a baker's dozen 8?
That's a baker's dozen is 13.
Oh,
but
we're almost there.
It's 1 extra. You're getting that extra donut.
All right. So for our extra donut sorcerer instance we have here, we got Cyclonic Rift, Deadly Rollick, Fierce Guardianship, Force of Negation, Force of Will, Mana Drain, Memory Plunder, Mission Briefing, Mystical Tutor, Narset's Reversal, Psychic Spiral, Rapid Hybridization, Sudden Spoiling, and Sudden Substitution. So I'm going to take
all I heard was a bunch of counter spells, and I'm in heaven, so I'm happy.
I do like this suite of, a little bit of counter magic, a little bit of removal. The thing that I noticed that's lacking here is seeing how you're playing blue. Blue's suite of instant speed draw spells is phenomenal, and that I'm just not seeing in here.
Yeah, I noticed that as well, but I think when it is... even though Lazav has hexproof, you still gotta protect everything else, especially with the combos in the deck. So maybe they just like saying no. That's kind of one of my favorite things to do when I play Brago, is just say no.
Well, that's why I have 2 cards for sure I'm going to suggest in here that say no, but also do other things. And that is Mystic Confluence and Cryptic Command. Both of them are counter spells that are versatile. They can do multiple things. And while yes, the triple blue on Cryptic Command could be annoying, honestly, I think it's worth it. I'm surprised I don't see it more in certain decks, especially a deck like this that requires, that little bit of protection. So why not have something that can counter draw or counter bounce? I mean, anything like that to just do whatever you need to do is perfect in my mind. Same with Mystic Confluence, you may be able to counter something, draw, or just at the worst case scenario, it's just like, well, I'm going to draw 3 at the end of turn because I already have this game locked up. Might as well find something to finish it off. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, out of the two of them, I don't say this very often, but I like Cryptic Command better because if you want to be swinging with Lazav, being able to tap down all the creatures on the board that your opponents control is just go ahead and swing away. Like, that's perfect for the type of deck this may want to be when it comes to combat, or it taps down all that big stompy deck, I really like Cryptic Command in this deck, and that's a great suggestion, Chris.
Yeah. The one mode of Cryptic Command like no one ever uses, and that's the one that you bring up.
It's the one mode that probably is used the most in EDH.
That's true.
Probably
that
the one
true.
mode that's never used in Modern.
I like the rest of it. Like, you get your Force of Negation, Force of Will, Mana Drain, that kind of stuff. Really good cards. This suite right here was hard for me to really delve into because it is very tuned. It is very set as what it should be, in my opinion. The one, Psychic Spiral, phenomenal card, awesome card. I have noticed personally playing this card. For those of you that don't know, it is a 5 mana, instant that reads shuffle cards from your graveyard into your library, and then target player puts that many cards from top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. I have noticed that this becomes a greedy card. You don't want to cast it when there's only like 4 cards in your graveyard or anything like that. So I actually cut this from my list because it didn't quite do enough for me.
Yeah, I really like this suite, and as we're talking about, combat and maybe protecting yourself against those big stompy decks, my other suggestion would be Reigns of Power. This is a 4 mana instant from Commander 16. It's 2 and 2 blue. It says untap all creatures you control and all creatures target opponent controls. You and that opponent each gain control of all creatures and the other creatures until end of turn. Those creatures gain haste until end of turn. So it's a way for you, if you don't have any creatures out for whatever reason and you're facing down that big stompy deck, swap creatures with them and hit them with their own deck. It's doing what you want to do. You're using your opponent's cards against you.
Worst case, you have one of your opponents attacks you, and that other guy's sitting there with like 500 tokens, and you're just like, and you take all his tokens, block with all of them, destroying a good chunk of his tokens, killing off the other guy's creatures, end of turn, you guys just flip.
Right. Or, you know what? Maybe it is worth sacrificing Lazav for 4 other creatures because he has to attack with Lazav and you block it, or vice versa. You give away Lazav and you can swing in with their team. I think this is a really good card. I wish I saw it more often.
Yeah, it's a very, very good card. It's definitely dependent on a deck and what you're like lacking in the deck for what you need it for. Because I've seen blue decks where I'm like, yeah, that card's just not good in there because you're already doing so much. You don't need something like that.
Yeah.
Wonderful suggestion, Max. Another card that I have forgotten about.
It was also in Commander 15, too.
Was it? I thought it was printed in like Tempest or something like that, too. Wasn't that the original?
It must be, because I think this is the Tempest. Oh, Stronghold.
Okay. Same block era. Yeah.
Printed in a bunch of Commander blocks.
Yeah, it is a very, very good card, and it should be played more, honestly, in my opinion. So I was discussing, a few moments ago about, the wonderful suite of card draw that is within instant speed. And a couple of them that, I thought I would just bring up is cards such as Frantic Search, Impulse, and Limdual's Vault. All of them are cheap mana cost, so they do what you need to do. Frantic Search pretty much is a free casting cost card. Cast it for 3 mana, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, untap 3 lands. Can't get any better than that. Not to mention, you are discarding cards, which allows you to, use your graveyard for whatever little shenanigans you have for that. Limdual's Vault is very similar to Diabolic's Vision. You look at so many cards, but you get to pay 1 life, put them all down, and do it again. Just keep going until you find what you're looking for. And then Impulse, just Impulse. Everyone knows Impulse. Look down top 4 or 5 and take a card and go.
Yeah, Limdual's Vault is so good. It definitely is going to find you the combo pieces you're looking for. Unfortunately, it doesn't really fuel your graveyard, but it is so good and kind of got expensive this year.
Did it really?
Yeah, it's the Commander 13 version is $10.
Oh, wow.
And the Alliance's version is $7. So I mean it's not expensive, but it definitely is
for what it
very
does,
expensive uncommon.
Yeah. Another card that I was debating on, and I think this would fit perfectly into your deck if you can find room for it, is Visions of Beyond. This card was printed in Magic 2012 and Ultimate Masters. A 1-mana instant that says draw a card. Perfect. I love it, That's what we're trying to do in blue, right? But wait, there's more. If a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, you draw 3 cards instead. So pretty much that's straight up, that's an ABUR reserve list, whatever card that is. I don't even remember the name of it.
Ancestral Recall?
Yeah, that's pretty much what
Mission?
it is. I think it's Ancestral Recall, where 1 mana, draw 3 cards.
We're a Magic podcast. We know this stuff.
Well, not really, because, we don't play with those cards.
it's on the reserve list.
That's stuff that we're just like, oh yeah, those were cool back in the day when people could get their hands on them.
Yeah, it's right there with that Underground Sea we're never going to own.
Yes, but this is a cheaper alternative. It's only like a $4 card, but you are already fueling people's graveyards, so why not take advantage of it and draw 3 cards? I mean, perfect card that I would definitely slap in here if you can find room for it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Okay, Chris, are you ready to move on to the last and final category of creatures?
Yes, I am ready for the creatures.
Okay, so there are 21 creatures. There is a body double, Bruvac the Grand Eloquent, yeah, that sounded right, Clever Impersonator, Consecrated Sphinx, Consuming Aberration, Dreamborn Muse, Duskmantle Guildmage, Evil Twin, Geth Lord of the Vault, Murderous Rider, Notion Thief, Phoenix God of Deception, Phyrexian Metamorph, Sepulchral Primordial, Sire of Stagnation, Stunt Double, Sir Conrad the Grim, Thassa the Deep Dwelling, Thief of Sanity, Vesuvian Shapeshifter, and Vizier of Many Faces. A lot of good stuff.
Yes, very good stuff, actually.
So before we move to our suggestions, I have a few I kind of want to talk about. And the first being Body Double. So this is a clone, but it hits something in any graveyard. So it's kind of like Lazav. You can have it come in as a copy of a target creature in any graveyard. I currently run this in my Psy Master Thopterist clone and drone deck, and I've yet to be able to find something I want to copy. So I would love to hear, Wes, if you've had luck with this card.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like a phenomenal card. I mean, honestly, I'm just curious if this turns into another greedy card. I mean, it is 5 mana, so do you really want to be copying like a 2/2 for 5 mana? Or are you looking for a bomb card? And that's something that's always dawned on me, is like, what's the mana involved? Is it worth the payoff for it?
Right. And granted, this deck is about milling, so there's probably way more targets than me hoping someone's creature dies in my deck, or my own creature dies. So he probably has more luck than I do. I would just love to hear if he has the best thing you've hit with it. Would be great to hear.
Yes.
Then we have Bruvac. He's from Jumpstart. He's the legendary creature that if an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill twice that many.
Yep. Double mill. Phenomenal card.
Double mill. I mean, impossible to find.
Is it really impossible to find?
I mean, it's Jumpstart. People are finally getting restocked on it.
I suppose, yeah. No, that's a really good card. It fits into the aspect of what you're trying to do. And actually, this card seems like the card that would do wonders if you had to push yourself into the mill, game plan. If that's how your deck wants to play today, this card is definitely the card you need to find.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, Consecrated Sphinx, everybody knows what that does. It's just drawing them cards. That's great. We have some stuff that benefit from the mill, like Consuming Aberration. Dreamborn Muse is a mill enabler based off of hand size. There are quite a few clones in this list. We had Body Double, there's an Evil Twin, a Clever Impersonator, a Stunt Double, a Vesuvian Shapeshifter, and the Vizier. What do you think about all the clones that do you think they're in here because he wants to use his opponent's stuff? Or are they just in here because a lot of them don't hit the graveyard?
It's a good question. Probably because he wants to use his opponent's stuff.
Yeah.
Strictly as what he said in his, what the deck wants to do is he wants to find clever ways of using his opponent's resources against them, which is pretty much what this deck is doing with this creature package. A few of the creatures, they do stuff in their own rights, but the other ones are actually sticking straight to that plan.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other cards in here you want to talk about, or do you want to move on to our suggestions?
There's a few of them, I like Phoenix, but I don't think the deck's built around him too much. He does mill, all that stuff, but he's really creature reliant, and I don't know, it's kind of one of those, he's kind of one of the cards that I'm always on the fence about whether he's good or bad, and I can never come up with a proper answer for him. He's either really good in a game or he's really bad. There's like never an in-between for me.
Yeah, I was looking at Phoenix. I get that he might be like that plan C. I have a few things on board. Lazav is maybe like a 5/5 copy of something, and then I can start, using Phoenix's ability to mill people out. I don't know how often Phoenix will actually be a creature.
Yes.
Just because all the permanents in this deck are pretty much creatures.
Yep.
And depending on how many you can stick on the board. So I do agree it might be one considering to take out if you find something better to replace it with.
Yep. Out of all the creatures in here, aside from the Primordial and stuff like that, because that card's just bonkers. If it comes out, it's probably just game over. And Sire's Stagnation, both phenomenal cards. I love Thassa in here. Thassa's, let's just blink Lazav and turn him into something different. Woohoo! Game over, right? That's just how that works.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's another Conjurer's Closet.
Yep. Built into a creature that allows you to do other weird shenanigans.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to some suggestions, Chris.
Okay.
Why don't you kick us off?
The first one I want to suggest is Fathom Feeder. It is a 2-mana Eldrazi that costs blue and black. It is just a 1/1 for 2 mana. It has Death Touch and Ingest. And those of you that don't know what Ingest reads, it reads as whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles a top card of his or her library. So he has Ingest 1 because it's only 1 damage. That's pretty good, because it fits into the thing. I know, granted, it is exiling, so not quite what you're trying to do, but it's still within that mill theme, that sub-theme. And it is a 1/1 Death Touch for 2 mana. It also has the ability of, for 5 mana, 3 colorless, blue and black, draw a card. Then each opponent exiles a top card of their library. While you're not gaining advantage from the cards getting put into their graveyards, that you were looking for, instead they're getting exiled, you still get to draw a card. So it's a kind of a built-in draw engine for you if need be. I'm not sure exactly how good this card would be for you, but it's something that I've always wanted to see work. And for you lacking in the card draw department and the, creatures beating on you, this could be an alternative that might fit.
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. I'll start off with my first one.
Okay.
And that is Sakashima of 1,000 Faces.
Do I hear Dana right now? Is this what I hear?
You very well do. So this is similar to your Helm of the Host suggestion. It's just a 4-mana clone that says the legend rule doesn't apply. So you could make it another Lazav and copy something else. You could make it, a second Sir Conrad and, combo out that way. Looking at the clones in the deck, I think this would be a great replacement for Vesuvian Shapeshifter, because I don't know how often you're going to want to trigger the upkeep clause on Vesuvian Shapeshifters, which says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may turn this creature back face down to remorph it. So it drops your curve a little bit. It's only 1 blue pip instead of 2. The only issue is, it's a $20 card, but, there is no restrictions, and Commander Legends is still readily available, at least everywhere I've been going. So you should be able to get your hands on this pretty easily.
Yeah.
What's your next one, Chris?
So one of the creatures that I want to discuss is Rakshasa. That's why So just for all you listeners out there, we had to take a pause here because apparently I can't spell, and I'm in Scryfall typing this card in going, where are you? Why won't you come up? And that's why I can't spell, because I was spelling it wrong. So Rakshasa Debaser is a creature cat demon who's a 6/6 for 6 mana. I mean, that value right there is just perfect. Now it reads, whenever it attacks, put target creature card from a defending player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And it has Encore, exile a card from your graveyard, blah, 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 each opponent, all that fun stuff, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. I don't care about that stuff. I'm more worried about the fact that this card allows you to do what you're looking to do. You are using your opponent's resources to your advantage. While you're getting a 6/6 for 6, which is just complete value to me, you still have to attack with it, which you could just send it in willy-nilly at somebody just to steal their best creature out of their graveyard. I really like this card. Personally, I need to find somewhere to put this because it's so good, but we'll see if that ever happens.
And you kind of miss the Encore part of this,
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Encore, whatever.
Hey, think about it, though. You're getting to do it 3 times.
Right, yeah.
3 times versus 1 is super cool.
It is very good. Yeah, Encore built in, so you have multiple options with it, and So good. Definitely something I would consider. The thing about your creature package is that Dimir creatures suck. I'm going to be completely honest. Dimir creatures suck. There's not really
Thank you. Someone has finally agreed with me.
They're not like, you're not getting extreme value that you do out of like the green creatures. You're not getting the extreme narrow-minded focus of red creatures or, black's broad of, flying, death touch, all that kind of stuff. No, you're stuck in these, just nothing's good.
Yeah, they're trying to do what each color wants to do specifically, and they don't do it well together.
Yes.
And yes, there are exceptions to our statements, and for all I know, we're now going to be canceled the second week of the new year after this little tangent that we're on. But whatever, that's the internet. It happens.
It does.
So that was a great suggestion. I'm going to move on to my next one,
Sounds
which
like a
is
plan.
the Haunt of High Tower. This is a 6 mana 3/3 for 4 black. It has flying and lifelink, and it attacks. When it attacks, defending player discards a card. You're
Ooh.
fueling the graveyard. That's cool. But I like the second part of the text on this card is whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So you mill, if you can somehow give Lazav first strike along with that sort of body in mind, you just pump this thing up to the high heavens, that's 10 counters right there. Yes, it's 6 mana, but it's flying and lifelink, so that's a way to pad your life total. Worst case, you chump block, you gain some life, and you move on with your day, and you body double it next turn,
Yep.
I think what this deck needs, besides the clones and some of the graveyard shenanigans, is you need stuff that is just going to gain you value, even if it's small incremental, like 3 life.
Exactly.
Do you really want to take a turn off to play this? Probably not, but it's going to pay off next turn if it's around.
Yes.
So that is definitely one of my suggestions for this. Do you have another one, Chris?
I do. So we're talking about clones and all this stuff, and these clones are nice. I like them a lot. But how about a clone-ish card that you can use repeatedly? And that is Dimir Doppelganger. 3 mana, 0/2 shapeshifter for 3 mana on the ability. Exile target creature card from a graveyard. Dimir Doppelganger becomes a copy of that card and it gains this ability. So it allows you to not only remove that card, so you don't have to worry about it for them doing shenanigans with it, but your card becomes a copy of that. And you can do this repeatedly. So, I mean, it's not like, I'm stuck now with this copy. I need to find a way to blink or return this card to my hand to recast it. No, this just put in another 3 mana and turn it into something else while exiling that card.
Yeah, I really like this card, especially because you can use it defensively. Let's say someone does crack a Scavenger Grounds and you have, something in your graveyard you want to keep around, like your Consecrated Sphinx. You turn Doppelganger into it.
Yes.
And then, cool, now I have a second Consecrated Sphinx just chilling here.
Agreed 100%.
My next suggestion is Night Hauler.
Oh, I have not heard that name in a long time.
So this is a 3 mana enchantment creature. It's 1 black, and it also has Bestow for 2 black. Night Hauler and the enchanted creature each get +X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. So you could slap this onto Lazav, which is already a copy of something, and give it +X. And let's say Lazav does die for whatever reason. You still have the Night Hauler sticking around because it just falls off.
Yep.
So you're getting double value out of 4 mana, which I think is super good. It really goes right along with like Consuming Aberration. That gets bigger for every card in your graveyard. This is going to get bigger for every card in the graveyard. So yeah, it could be a dead card when it comes down to 1v1. But for all you know, that player still has 20 cards in their graveyard, and you just played a 20/20 for 3 mana.
Exactly. I mean, I wish they would come back with Bestow. It's such a good mechanic.
Well, Mutate was kind of like a new Bestow, but not the same. Not the same.
I was like, you got jokes over there, Max. Mutate what?
It's 2021. I gotta have something coming at everybody for the new year.
Oh boy. The next one I wanted to discuss here, and this actually caught me off guard that it was not in the deck, due to the simple fact of what he wants to do with the deck, all this stuff. And this actually goes back to the land base as well, because you could add an additional land to help with this card. And that's Rexiel the Risen Deep. For those of you that don't know Rexiel, it is a 5/8 legendary creature Kraken for 6 mana, 3 colorless, double blue, and a black. It has Island Walk and Swamp Walk. Now, that's what I'm talking about with the land, is you could put a Urborg in there. Give everybody swamps. Now you have your Swamp Walk to go through whenever you want. So now whenever Rexiel the Risen Deep deals combat damage to a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. I noticed that majority of this deck is based around playing people's creatures. So trying to find something that plays their other cards as well would benefit your strategy more. I mean, you could find, a Rift or something, which you can't cast for Overload, but, you can find other really good cards. The card draw, the ramp that Max was talking about earlier. I mean, anything like that could be done with this card.
Yeah, I mean, I just played against 2 Rexiel decks on the Scrap Challers stream a few weeks ago, and I definitely got to see both Dana and Nick do some cool stuff with that ability. So, I mean, even if it's as small as like an Anticipate, that's card draw.
Yep.
You never know what you're going to find, and again, you're using your opponent's resources for your own, and that's exactly what Wes wants to do.
Yeah, and I mean, you're already milling them, so this is definitely probably my number one suggestion is to try to make this put in. I mean, a 5/8 for 6 mana, that 8 but you can still block things. I mean, honestly, I don't see any downfall in this card, aside from maybe it's a big card, everyone plays the type of deal, and maybe you're trying to avoid that, which I completely understand 100%, but something to keep in mind.
Yeah. I have one final creature suggestion.
Okay.
And this, again, is kind of more on the spiky, competitive edge of the spectrum, but my suggestion would be Hull Breacher.
Oh boy.
So Hull Breacher is brand new from Commander Legends. It's 2 and a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk Pirate with Flash. If an opponent would draw a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead, you create a treasure token.
Yep.
This is why I'm suggesting this card. He's already running Notion Thief, which is somewhat of a similar effect. You just get to draw the cards instead of them.
Yes.
Hull Breacher, yes, can be a game breaker. It makes things unfun for people, but it also makes them have to think creatively to get rid of it. And it solves your mana problem, Let people draw cards and you get mana for it. Like, that's fixing a lot of his mana problems right there.
Honestly, in my opinion, when I look at this card, now I've personally never played against it, but when I see this card versus Notion Thief, right, that's one that we're talking about that does the same thing?
Yes.
Yep, the 3/1 for 4 mana. This card doesn't seem as bad as Notion Thief, because Notion Thief just makes me mad because it's like, no, those were my cards. What are you doing? This one's like, oh, you get some mana rocks. Okay. And it doesn't quite dawn on you till later in the game that was a bad decision. But at that point, you're not quite as upset about it.
Right. I mean, you still don't draw the cards, though. That's the problem.
Yeah. But I mean, they're not netting the cards neither. So then you're just like, okay, whatever.
True. Yeah. It's more of like a Spirit of the Labyrinth type thing. Everybody draws one each turn.
Yep.
Well, Chris, do you have any other suggestions for creatures?
I have one more suggestion. And this
Let's
card used to be expensive, and it's actually been dropping in price, and I think that's strictly due to the fact that people can't play Paper Magic right now. And that's Snapcaster Mage. Snapcaster Mage is only I think it's like a $35 card right now. I think it would work wonderful in this deck to be able to recast your counter spells or any of your other protection spells, anything that you could need. I noticed that you had Mission Briefing in here, so why not have another option in a creature that you could flash in, still use as a blocker if need be, and get your spell out of it.
Yeah, Snapcaster was definitely on my list in my head as well. I run the bigger, beefier version of it in Torrential Gearhulk in my Brago deck, and the only reason I choose that over Snapcaster is I need the body more than the ability.
Yep. And I mean, I usually don't suggest Snapcaster Mage because it used to be like a $70 or $80 card, But right now, since it dropped in price so much, it's definitely something to consider, especially if you're looking for a way to be able to, reuse some of your spells. Might as well see if you can pick one up.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Okay, I think that is going to wrap up our decks you play for this Lazav Dimir Mastermind deck from Patreon supporter Wes Allen. Chris, if anybody wants to get at us and tell us some of their suggestions for this deck, how would they do that?
Well, you can reach us on a multitude of social media platforms. You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us online at cmdrcentral.com, and you can also find us on YouTube, where we mainly just have, content and stuff like that. I know I personally don't check our YouTube comments, but I know Max and Dana do, so holler at them there if you want to, or hit us up on Twitter, because that's more likely where we'll respond.
Yes, and of course, if you are interested in getting a Decks You Play episode just like this one, head over to patreon.com/CMDRCentral. Check out all of our reward tiers, including this one, or just the basic one to get into our Slack to chat with me and the hundreds of other people in there about Commander, other forms of Magic, and play some virtual EDH with us. And you know what? If you can't support us financially, we totally get that. A thumbs up, a like, a comment on any of those platforms where you can hear us just does a lot to bring a lot of visibility to the show.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Yes, so thank you, everybody who does support us, and thank you, Wes, one final time for supporting us and sending us this awesome Lazav deck. Can't wait to hear about the changes you've made to it that we suggested, and otherwise, just again, thank you for supporting us. If you want to find us on Twitter individually, you can find Dana at Dana Roach. You can find myself at CMDRCentral_Max. You can find Chris at YSquishy1. Our podcast is edited by Rafael Garcia. He's on Twitter at Ursa Bearwalker. And our podcast theme song is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. We will be back next week with another show. Until then, I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.